Well, welcome, lovely viewers and listeners. Today we have another amazing guest for you. It is the last Blue Boar Baron of England, um, known as Robin Hood today, not his real name, and his identity is being protected for obvious reasons. But Robin Hood has basically, over the last, he came into my life a few months ago because, as some of you are aware, I've been in the courts myself, and I've been challenging bankruptcies with council tax and various other things. And Robin Hood came to my rescue a few months ago and started giving me his version of how he has, and all of the knowledge that he has discovered over the last 2 or 3 years. And it is mind blowing. And I think it's fair to say you have to have a big pair of balls to use it in the court and know exactly who you are and stand by it, which is something that I've personally struggled with up to this point, as Robin knows. But he's kindly agreed to come on today. So I would like to say, welcome, Robin. It's great to have you.
Thank you very much, and it's a pleasure to be here.
Good. I'm glad. Um, so before we go any further, as always, everybody, if you can continue to like and comment and share and subscribe, it really helps this channel to grow. Doing what we do, especially Robin, what Robin does. I mean, I don't even know when he sleeps, basically, with all the stuff that he's doing and all the people that he's helping. But it's challenging and it's tough. So if you are feeling a little bit generous today, if you want to buy me a coffee /Mel Clark, that would be very much appreciated. So, Robin, I always love a backstory, and I don't really know, even though we've had many conversations, I don't know really your backstory. You're a bit cagey, I have to say. But I would love to know the normal Robin Hood before you got into all of this, and what did you do for a living, all that sort of stuff. Just a background. But what sort of got you into this? What was it? What was that pivotal moment that sort of blew you wide open and wanted you and took you down this journey? So, are you happy to share a little bit?
Yeah, we can share a little bit. Look,
Okay.
at the end of the day, my backstory is very much similar to everybody else's. I was a normal guy, not being awful, but I was the black sheep of the family, wouldn't abide by their rules, kept getting myself into trouble because I knew there was something awfully wrong with it. And sort of knuckled down, got myself, into their system, shall we say, and basically just went on right up until sort of COVID hit. Once
Hmm.
COVID hit, that was my, if you like, kick in the pants again. I knew it was criminal. I knew it was nothing more than a cult. And
Hmm.
America now is literally stating that as fact. From all the evidence that's coming out of all the evidence coming out of America at the minute, it's ridiculous what they've done with this figment. But all that was nothing to do with it. It was a rush job to literally do what they're doing now.
Yeah.
Um, and that's it. It's basically they've covered up everything. They've taken what we believe and twisted it. And it's as simple as that. And that's what I've been working on for the past few years, as you know.
So you basically, so really 2020, I'm not going to say gave you permission because you don't need permission, but you always knew you were different. You always had a different mindset and challenged things, whether it was overtly or in your own mind. But when 2020 came along, that was really like, well, I knew I was bloody right, and then the next bit of your journey continued. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah, it was just basically I've always challenged, the police, the whatever. Who do you think you are? Your servants, your public servants, you're nothing more. And it was a few phrases that they started to drop in and their tactics, shall we say. And it was more like they were military. Now, I have got a military background, um, so I knew the telltale signs and the fact that they didn't care. Whereas before, and when I dealt with the constables, that I'm going to call them, they knew how far they could and couldn't go because they were under the Coronation Oath Act. They were under restraint. These are no longer under restraint. This is what the 2019-2020 thing was to do, which was literally put the fear of mankind into everybody.
Yeah.
And basically, this is what they've done. But they rushed it. So the stuff wasn't ready. Things had to be rolled out quickly. And people like myself, and a lot more people, I've got to tip my hat to them, stood firm and said, you can take one and do one. You're not coming near me. You're not coming near my family. You want to sack us. We're out of here.
Yeah.
And that was it. And I didn't care. And I really don't care, even to this day, what they want to try and do. As you know, Mel, they've tasered me, I can't remember how many times now, quite a lot.
Yeah.
There's a video of me getting tasered in Leeds, just for absolutely standing there in a position. That was it. And I am still on bail for it because they know as soon as that bail goes, I am going to sue them and shut them down. Because that is a breach of my constitutional rights. That's a breach of common law.
How long ago was that?
About 14 months now. So I've been on bail with no charges, no anything, for 14 months. Because they're terrified of what I'm going to do.
Well, it's a bit like, I don't know if you saw Matt Hardy, the guy that goes around and films the Blade Runner stuff. He's got a tag, and they just keep putting the court case back and back and back. So he's like a prisoner in his own home for doing nothing.
They're ruling by fear.
Yeah.
And this is what we've got to now literally say no to. No, we're not having your tag. No, we're not going to prison until you can demonstrate who and what you are. Because let's just dive straight in.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think this will be interesting to your viewers. If you pull up the Lord Kilmore letter.
Okie dokie. I'm just going to share my screen.
But I'll give a bit of a backstory while you sort that out, Mel.
Okay.
This is the letter from 1960 to then MP Edward Heath from the Lord Chancellor, Lord Kilmore. And the Lord Chancellor of that day was asked by Edward Heath, who then had to inform the Queen because of his standing and role, about going into the EEC. And then, what the implications, both in law and constitutional outcome would be. And it's rather a damning letter for Edward Heath, the Queen, and the Parliament, monarchy, you name it, everything. Because he states very clearly, and I'm sure Mello put this up for you to read. But
It's already up. It's already up.
No, I mean on your site.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And basically it goes into the Treason Act, right? And how we would lose sovereignty. Now, in 1973, Edward Heath stated that we would not lose sovereignty at all. That we wouldn't lose anything. It would not affect us in any way, shape, or form. That was a complete and utter lie by the Prime Minister. And also another interview he did in 1973, which we're getting hold of, he basically stated that the people were too thick to govern themselves. So it was down to Parliament to basically govern the people. So that's when we went from governance, which they worked for us, to government, which means enslaved entrapment. And you'll see through this document and others that we're going to touch on. And it basically states that the evidence of the concert, which states Parliament may do many things, but what it may not do is surrender any of its rights to govern, unless we have been defeated in war. So when did Europe defeat us in war? It never has.
No, I was going to say.
Right? The ruling given to King Edward III in 1366, in which it states that told that King John's actions in surrendering England to the Pope and ruling England as a vassal king to Rome was illegal because he couldn't do it. But look what he calls us. Calls us England. That's our true name. We are English. We're not British. We're not UK citizens. We're not British citizens because they're corporations.
Well, according to Pete Stone, we're not English either. We're Albion, I think he said.
Well, that's the old, really old, and that's going back to, back to, sort of probably the first, what he likes to be called himself, the first King of England. Which again, we can go back to that, but I just think it's too far.
Yeah.
We are English, we are England, and we've been called that for quite a long time. Hundreds of years, right? So let's not get bogged down in what was yesterday to what is today. Today we are caught in a slavery act by Parliament, by the commercial Parliament, that puts us all under slavery. By putting us into the Great British Corporation or the United Kingdom Corporation. They've removed England from all the documentation. They call any entitlements now benefits. Not benefits. A benefit is an handout. Have we all not paid national insurance, taxes?
Yeah.
Well, if we've all paid then it's not a benefit then, is it? Because we've all joined in the club to pay into the club that if I get stuck and need some extra money, or my pension when I retire, it's there waiting for me. It pays for our health service. Every time we buy a loaf of bread, does that bread not have tax on it?
It does.
Every time we pay a bill, does that not have tax on it?
I think so.
Right then, so what on earth are we paying them for? If it's not for our benefit, our entitlement, but it's for their benefit, why are we paying?
Yeah.
So if you scroll down this document, it states, and if you go down to, there's after the first, what is it, where it says no vessel king to the Pope, nor was the money legitimately owed. And this is the Treaty of Rome. But you go, Parliament would be required to surrender some of its functions to the organs of the community, which is the EEC. Well, they can't have their functions or surrender anything because it doesn't belong to them. And this is where Lord Kilmore was rather clever and stated the facts. The Crown would be called on to transfer part of its treaty-making powers to those organs of the community. The English Constitution confirms treaty-making powers only to the sovereign. The sovereign cannot transfer those powers to a foreign power, nor even to our own Parliament, because they are mere servants. Hang on a minute. That's not what we're living in today, is it?
No.
So, we carry on. Of the monarch. Sovereignty itself cannot be given away as it resides with who?
The people.
Who entrust it to the monarch for his or her lifetime, and the monarch is obliged by law to pass the sovereignty on to any successor as it was received. Yeah. Oh, hang on a minute. So the monarch cannot now sign any document or allow Parliament to sign away any sovereignty. Our courts of law would significantly, some degree of independence, and become subordinate in certain respects to European courts of justice. It is a premiere to allow any case to be taken to a foreign court not under the control of the sovereign. Now, who's sovereign?
We're the sovereign.
Correct, because he's the Lord Chancellor himself to the monarch and to Edward Heath, then MP, stated it as fact in law. And to surrender any of our sovereignty, one drop of it, is treason.
Yeah.
The European Court of Justice, European Human Rights Foreign Court, not under the control of our sovereign, premier, is a crime akin to treason. So there you go, it's fact, it's treason.
Yeah.
By them giving away our sovereignty to a foreign state without our consent, breaches our constitutional rights both in the Magna Charta and the Bill of Rights, the Declaration of Rights. And this bit will make you laugh. It is to allow any laws or regulations not made by the sovereign in Parliament to take effect as law in England. So what does this mean? That from 1973, no act of Parliament is now in effect. It's all illegal. And if we want to push it even further, we can go back to 1960. Because this letter proves that Edward Heath, the government of the day, and the monarchy conspired to subvert and alter the constitutional rights of the people of England. States it right here. This is illegal under the 1351 Treason Act. Still in force. Check it, guys. It's also the 1351 Act of Premiere. That's been removed. I wonder why, because that had the death penalty. So why would somebody committing treason remove the death penalty?
Didn't want to die?
Which was brought in by King Edward III because he believed it an affront to his honour and dignity as King of England to have laws imposed upon his kingdom by a foreign power. So what is the EU as today?
Foreign power.
It's an illegal state. It's a foreign state of Europe. It's commercial. And we'll get into that in a minute. It is illegal that any of his subjects to be taken out of England to be tried in a foreign court or for his bishops to excommunicate any of his subjects. On the orders of the Pope, it is a further to allow foreign laws to affect England, as this is entirely contrary to the Act of Premiere 1392, which is still in force, the Act of Supremacy 1559, the Declaration and Bill of Rights 1689, and Treason and Felony Act 1848.
All of which are still in play.
All of which are still in place. So all laws from 1973, all Parliament acts of Parliament are void.
So how have they got away with it, Terry?
Because when did this letter come out? 2002. It came out in 2002.
Right, okay.
Right? So why did they classify it top secret and bury it for 30 years?
Wow. They don't want anybody to see it, obviously.
That's one. And two, it proves that every government since 1973 has been in the act of treason, terrorism, fraud, misrepresentation, deception, violation of the Declaration of Rights, violation of the Bill of Rights, violation of the Magna Charta.
So why did it come to light in 2002?
Because they couldn't hold it anymore. They could, in this country, you can only hold things for 30 years under top secret. Have to become available then to the people. What also happened in 2001/2002?
9/11?
Now, well, that was sort of a cover up of doing what they were trying to do. What came off the gates of Buckingham Palace?
Oh,
The shield of sovereignty.
yeah,
Because they could no longer hold the sovereignty of the people. Because the truth was well out now.
right.
Okay? Because it states here, and if you want to read on, you know, there's about six different treasons. And then they removed a load of other treasons that give them the death penalty. Because Parliament decided, illegally, that they had the authority to remove the death penalty. They didn't. They didn't have, one, they didn't have the power. Two, they didn't have the jurisdiction. And three, they can never hold sovereignty. So I want you to go back up to something for me, if you can. You know where we said about the ABCs.
Adherence.
Where it says the Crown will be called on to transfer part of its treaty-making powers to the organ. Now, the one thing here is this, right? And there's a law that I'll send you for your thing if you want later. It's called the Katona Law. And again, it's Justice Denning stated in case law that you cannot delegate power. Okay? Power cannot be delegated. Who else states it? Because it's stated here by Lord Kilmore. The English Constitution confirms treaty-making powers only on the sovereign. The sovereign cannot transfer these powers to a foreign power, nor even to our own parliament, because they are what?
Mere servants.
Of both the monarchy and the people. Because who holds the sovereignty? We do.
It resides.
We are the power of England, not them. They have now subverted our constitutional rights, our common law rights, our inalienable rights, and committed of treason upon treason upon treason from 1973. By surrendering our sovereignty to a foreign power and lied to us constantly. Our laws and courts are not ours anymore because they've moved us to being British. And this is how they did it. You read this document, it tells you parallels to the position of Britain and the EU would be, for instance, a constitutional conversation whereby Parliament passed British North American bills without question at the request of Parliament of Canada. So the money's not even ours. It's no longer pound sterling. It's a foreign script, foreign money. It's there.
As a slight aside, when we did go into the EU, what was all the malarkey about in terms of Thatcher refusing to go to the euro coin and remain the Great British Pound?
Because she believed it was a step too far.
Okay.
And basically, she knew that with so many states that we would end up surrendering even more power that they couldn't hold. And this is why Thatcher was kicked out of office. This is why anybody that goes against the orders of the, and not being awful, it's not just me saying this, it's, you know, all the the people in authority that have been kicked out of Parliament now are stating it as fact. You know, they've got Suella Bradman, I think they call her, the blonde lady, with the bob. She's writing a book. She came out and stated Tony Smith runs the country. He's the man that runs between the authority and tells the Prime Minister what to do. Hang on. That is not democracy.
Yeah, who's
That's
Tony
not
Smith?
what we voted for.
Who's he?
Exactly. Well, that's what we all want to know. That's what she wanted to know. And she was a minister within the cabinet. And then you've got Boris Johnson's right-hand man, Dominic Cummings,
Oh, he's a lovely chap.
stating as fact in the interview that you've got all these little men running round and handing you the script. And anybody that went outside of that script got pulled to one side and warned.
Yeah.
Now, he said that's fact. It's not me just saying it.
Yeah.
I'm only repeating what they've stated. It's up to you to do your own research on this.
Yeah.
Right? But the document is very clear. And he states it here. In theory, the liberty to repeal, right?
Yeah.
To repeal the relevant acts or acts, but would agree with you that we must act on the assumption that entries into communities would be whatever that is. We can't see now. I've lost my place. Sorry, guys. We should therefore have to accept a position where Parliament have no more power to repeal its own enactments. So we've now lost. Parliament has lost all its power. Now works for somebody else. Practice to abrogate the statutes of Westminster. In short, Parliament would have to transfer to the councils or other organs of the community. But what have we just found? What have we just found out? You cannot transfer power. States it.
Yeah.
And then there is no constitutional accepted method of doing this because it would be tantamount to total abrogation of the duty to govern us according to our laws and customs. And it would be an act of treason, 1351, an act of treason premiere under Act of 1992, premiere, Treason Act 1559 Act, the Supremacy Act, Declaration of, violating Felony Treason Act. I mean, my God, it tells you there they cannot do it. But what have they done? They did it.
Yeah.
This is why now you understand why the courts are not running English law. Right? They're not running at all in law. They're running under commercial law.
Yeah.
So if we put that one down, Mel, and I'm sure your listeners, watchers will look forward to reading that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
In its entirety. So it's there for them to read. And if you pull up now, tell you what, I'll do it a different way today. Pull up Lord Coke.
It's just a WhatsApp thing, wasn't it?
Yes, love, it is. Yeah, right?
Yeah.
So I've taken this phrase out of this case. There's a lot more to it. You can find it. It's fairly easy to find. Now, the draftsman of the Petition of Rights, that's your Declaration of Rights, started in 1610. Lord Coke was a massive judge and was one of the top justices in our lands in this era. Okay? And this is down to the Bonham, it's called the Bonham case, right? Earning the Common Pleas Court. And he states, in many cases, the common law will control acts of Parliament and sometimes adjudge them to be utterly void. For when an act of Parliament is against common right and reason or repugnant or impossible to be performed, the common law will control it. That's Metric Martyrs, I think, love.
No, that's Lord Coke.
Oh, is it? Will common law will control it and adjudge such an act to be void.
So if all acts of Parliament can be voided, if they don't run in conjunction with common law, what are all the acts of Parliament since 1973 that were being committed in treason? They're void. Right?
And this was, this was a long time ago, 1610.
All right, but your Bill of Rights is only 70 years, well, it's 58 years after this. And it took 50 odd years to write. So he was writing the Bill of Rights and Petition of Rights. Clearly states it, Lord Colt, the draftsman of the Petition of Rights, said in 1610. And this is case law.
Yeah.
Never runs out in common law or Lord of England jurisdiction. Can't do.
The challenge we have, as well, you know, because you've been in the courts and lots of people have been in the courts. And I remember a circuit judge saying to me when I quoted, I think it was the Bill of Rights, or it was the, what's the one that Bills of Exchange, whichever one it was, and also the Local Government Act. And she basically made reference to how old they were and sort of implied, well, that's a bit old now. It's not.
But what you state is, are you attempting to subvert my alienable rights in law? Because they can never be removed. This is what they're attempting to do. So you've seen that one. So what we're going to do now is click on the order of precedence between UK statutes and EU law.
Okay. Yeah, just let me hit share again.
So I came across this document and it literally blew me mind. It blew my mind. And this is what they're doing. Now, we had an election in 2016 which told the government clear, precise, we're out of Europe. We're sick of it. We're sick of being controlled by what they are. So why are they still going behind our backs and creating new laws and nonsense in EU law? The order of precedence between common law, equity law, UK statutes and EU law. So now we're in 4 jurisdictions.
Yeah.
Okay. We can't be in more than 1. So now they've attempted to put us in 4 jurisdictions. Equity law because it's commercial and it's contract law. Every contract must be entered into voluntary and knowingly. And with it and intentionally. We're not. UK statutes are not laws, they're rules. EU law has nothing to do with us as they run in legislation. And it tells you in this document, UK statutes is the law made by Parliament. No, it doesn't. Parliament makes statutory regulations, rules. It is only when we accept them into laws does it become law. But it's by the sovereignty of the people that accept it. If we say no, it's not. And here we go. Of the United Kingdom. What's the United Kingdom? It's a corporation. It's not even England anymore. We're not even talking England. It covers most parts of legal systems. However, various areas of law are overseen by common law. The statutes consist of bills, both private and public. It is written in a formal document of codified into law. No, it's not. And this is what they've done. They've now given themselves more power than they have. They've gone from mere servants to we are government and you will do as you're told. That's how they've done it.
Yeah.
The relationship between statute law and common law is the fact that statutes are not generally entered comprehensively to self-supporting. Statutes do not purport to cover all possible circumstances. or possible considerations that may be relevant in deciding a particular case. Common law, therefore, is crucial to understanding and applying statutory law. Hang on, you can't stand in two jurisdictions because one's for the person, one's for the man. And if you don't understand that, you don't really need to listen to this anymore because you're lost. The person is basically a state citizen that works for a corporation. The man is above all that and cannot be touched by statutory rules. They're not laws. When a judge hears and decides individual cases, they will apply the interoperate both UK statutory and common law. Can't do that either. However, when common law varies with UK statutes, the statute law will override. Excuse me? You cannot override our amiable laws and rights. They're not called rights for nothing.
Do you think the judges believe that this is...
No, they know. They are appointed judges. They can't be appointed. They're appointed by Parliament. We'll go into that in a little bit. Equity law is the legal set of principles where petition addressed to the Chancellor are designed to complement common law. That's a lie. It's basically commercial law, but runs alongside common law for the two jurisdictions to work. It allows courts to a certain degree of flexibility and justice that sometimes lacks due to common law rigidity. See what they've done there? It's now down to the judge to decide what he will and will not allow as evidence.
Yeah.
Common law and your rights don't allow him to do that. He has to stand in the rigidity of English law. Simple as that. By your constitution, common law rights, amiable rights under the cornerstone of all English laws, which is your Magna Charta. Your great Charter of Liberty. So come on. You know what I mean? Get into the correct jurisdiction.
Could you
In your law, you want my
Sorry.
darling?
I was just going to say, could you state while you're stood in a county court that we know is being run as an administration court?
Now what you do is you ask the judge point blank out, is this a constitutional monarchy court? No longer do we accept administrative rule. No longer do we state, you know, any of the what they class as nonsense. Well, until I understand the jurisdiction, I do not consent. And without my consent, this court can no longer move forward. Are you going to practice law from the bench? And it's not the bar. What people have forgotten is the Bar Guild run from the inner city of London. They have no jurisdiction outside of law, outside of the inner city of London. And the reason is the inner city of London is nothing more than a federal state of Europe.
Well, it's also its own country, isn't it? Like Washington and the Vatican.
Yep, yep. But it's basically tied to Europe. It's a European federal state, right? So if we go EU law and court judgments which operate in conjunction with the legal system of the European Union states, which is affected where conflict occur, EU law would take precedent over national law. And these laws are binding on national authorities. As UK is a member state within the EU, the EU law is hence a part of UK law. Now, this is what Lord Kilmore warned. You cannot bring EU law into England. So what did they do? They changed the name. That's how simply they did it. They changed the name. They changed this from England, from English, to British, to Great Britain, to the United Kingdom, and then made it a corporation.
The sneaky little bastards.
Right? That was it. They then put us under a compelled performance contract yeah, under equity law, and then decided that equity law and common law could run together, but then UK statutes and EU law would trump both in a contract that we don't know about.
Yeah.
And it states there, the European courts would override the UK courts on appeal on areas of law which the EU has passed legislation. Now, what's legislation?
Rules.
To rule.
And
So
this
when does a rule trump law?
never.
Well, now it does.
3 years after we left Europe.
Well, it's a lot longer. We left Europe. It's supposed to leave Europe in 2016.
Yeah.
So why is our government in subversion of our constitutional rights and common law rights bringing this in?
Yeah.
So they could change the courts. Because the High Court is England's most civil court of first instance. It is also compromised of the Queen's Bench, blah, 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 common and civil laws, family division, chance, it goes on. But that has got, you've got to read this. Because it tells you judges are bound by law of binding in England and Wales and other common law jurisdictions. The maxim of law states very clearly that you can only stand in one jurisdiction. The court can only stand in one jurisdiction. So how does a judge now stand in 4 jurisdictions at the same time?
You know,
Because he's now studying equity law, contract law. He's now studying common law. He's now studying EU legislation and UK statutory legislation, which trumps law and your constitutional rights.
so you just used the word trumps. I was going to say to you, Trump is obviously talking about Canada becoming part of America. I think it was Greenland.
Listen, I'm going to get, if we can just get to that once in about 5 minutes.
All right. Okay.
And then I'll show you how that's done, because you're going to love this.
All right.
So we've now just seen this. Now, if you pull up the metric martyrs ruling,
Yes.
which you've just had on your do for what's it?
Okay, and share again. Yep.
So we put on the metric martyrs ruling. So I'm going to bring you into this now, because my voice is killing me. So now what I did is I took this and I put actually the publication where you can find this document, because they've hidden it. This is from a court case in 2002, which is only 20 years ago. 22 years ago. What year are we in? 23 years ago.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. So it's 23 years ago. And it states, the Bill of Rights 1689, Thornburn v City Sunderland Council 2002, commonly known as the metric martyrs judgment.
Yeah.
Now, what they've done is on the internet, especially Google, right, they've put this down as S Thornburn instead of R Thornburn, and it's over a grocers federation or few grocers or whatever it was going over. They wouldn't convert their weights and measures to European standard. It never happened. It's a lie. It's to bury this. Because this judgment was basically overrode a PNC or PCN, parking ticket, right? Where it went all the way to the High Court and then went on to the House of Lords, where all 5 judges stated the same thing. There is a provision in the Bill of Rights Act 1689, which states that all grants and promises of fine and forfeiture of a particular person before conviction are illegal and void. Also says in the Constitution, any and all laws that are repugnant to the Constitution, Bill of Rights, are therefore void for being as such. So that means all statutory law, whatever they want to call it, EU legislation, and equity law is void because the contract was not entered into willingly, knowingly, or intentionally. Because we don't know about it.
Yeah.
So hang on a minute. They're stood in 4 jurisdictions in an attempt to entrap you into contract and joinder of a contract that we don't know about, breaching your constitutional rights, your common law rights, your amiable rights, and it is, as we've just seen by Lord Kilmore's letter, 5 different acts of treason against you, the woman, the man, in a administrative court, which states very clearly that there is no act of parliament, order of a minister that can legitimise an administrative court, as it belongs only in the administrative realm. So what have they now put us all in? Within calling it Great Britain, the UK.
Yeah, we're a corporation, yeah.
It's a corporation. So they've now put you in as administrative entities. And they've taken away your Englishman status by the 1981 British Act, when it states that you lose your identity as British, basically, English, and become British. And therefore you lose all your amiable rights if you sign up to the UK corporation, which we never have. And it was never explained, so therefore that is null and void, because it is repugnant to common law.
They don't teach that in the schools, do they, Terry?
No. So now if you pull up the document that I shared with you.
Which one?
One second, let me get your where is it? Oh, tell you what it is. It is the London Gazette PDF.
Okay.
Now, there are certain things in law which cannot be thing. Now, we all witnessed the so-called, and I'm saying so-called, King of England get crowned and take his coronation oath. Because under the Coronation Oath Act, there can be no administrative courts in England. None. The King, and it states it in the Halsby's Book of English Law, 2011, which I'll get a copy up in a minute and read you after I've read this. Now we can go on. Now you can see it's the Privy Council office, Saturday, September the 10th, 2022. And this is off the London Gazette. Now, I don't want to read all of it out because it's blah, 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 blah. Right. But if you go up to about 5-6 lines up, if we go to 6 lines when it says death of our late sovereign and happy memories becomes our only lawful and rightful liege lord. Hang on, what? It becomes what? Liege lord. Well, look that up, guys. What it means is men sworn to him. Who's under an attestation? The judges, the police force, Parliament. The third, by grace of God and the United Kingdom Corporation of Great Britain Corporation, an island, Northern Ireland, and its other realms and territories. King. Hang on, shouldn't that be King surely is higher than liege lord? Head of state, head of the Commonwealth, defender of the faith. What bleeding faith? To whom we acknowledge our faith and obedience. No, we don't. I think 70% of the country can't stand him.
Probably
with
not.
humble affection, beseeching God to whom king and queens do reign and bless his majesty. Well, 1 is not majesty, 2 is not king, because it states it there. There's a liege lord. That's why the police are under a attestation and claim they work for the king. Well, if they work for the king, he has to pay them. And they are not public servants.
Yeah, and that's why we were all supposed to read the affirmation on his coronation.
Yep. And nobody did.
No. Well,
Therefore,
some
we're not on the
saddos
con.
would have done.
Sorry, say that again, Smudge.
I said some saddos would have done.
Well, very saddos, but we are not bound to him in any way, shape, or form. Because one, he hid the true nature of the contract, because that's what it was. It was a contract. It's a legal contract. We didn't state it. They've presumed and assumed that we did. Well, no, we didn't. So now we write to him and say, no, we're not under your authority. We don't give you our blessing. You are no longer our king, as stated in there. Because, like it says there, Commonwealth. Now, you touched on this earlier. Now he's buying Greenland and he's taking over Canada. How can he take over Canada, which is part of the Commonwealth, if the liege Lord Charles is still the king? King of what?
Yeah.
He's king of the corporation. He's the head of state. Now, there's another document I sent you that a while ago for you to read. Again, this was hidden from us, and I'm sure you'll put it up when you read it. It's 244 pages long. And it's from the Commonwealth Foreign Office, where it states that if the Queen allows this to go forward and signs this document to allow Edward Ethan government to surrender our sovereignty, which is committing the act of treason, and this is why she was called Queen Head of State, because she couldn't be called Queen anymore. She committed treason by attempting to surrender something that wasn't hers. What did Lord Kilmore say? You cannot surrender the sovereignty of the people, as they're people who own their own sovereignty. And what do you get when you go in these commercial courts? You are not sovereign. We'll take that document in and say, well, there you go. Are you now committing treason? Are you now committing misconduct public office? Because what all these people say therein. Public office.
Yeah.
You still there, Mel?
I am, yeah.
So if they're in public office, pull up that other document, that photograph I showed you, Mel, earlier.
Okie doke. Just give me a moment.
Now, this is the agency executive who is the director of public prosecutions. Agency executive. What does that tell you? You're in corporate standing.
Just bear with me. I'm just making sure I'm sharing the right bit. Yeah.
There you go. Now, it says there, gives you his name away. He's the minister responsible for this guy. Yeah, of England and Wales. Again, England and Wales. So they still use it in their paperwork. But have a look when it was last audited. Annual budget 2012-2013. I wonder why. So if you widen that up, Mel, and go to the top, where it says type.
Yeah.
You can make that a little bit larger. It actually states it is a non-ministerial government department.
Yeah.
So how can an independent body that must be independent according to the Separation of Powers Act be a non-ministerial government department, who is a non-ministerial government department of the Justice of Ministers Office, which is what? A non-ministerial government department. So now we've got the CPS, we've got the Justice Minister, who rules the judges, in the same non-ministerial government department, working for the corporation, and Parliament now is a corporation, because it tells you there, because it states it is an agency overview. Agency executive. And these are supposed to be independent of the government, because the government is nothing more than administrative. It's statutory. It's for the persons. And it is only there to conduct rules for themselves to stop becoming tyrannical. And we have forgotten who and what we are.
Yeah.
But because we're sovereign, their acts of parliament don't faze us. The police are not the police. They're not police constables. So here you go, Mel. Take us off that, babe, and put us on to the misconduct in public office.
Was that a web page?
Yep.
Yeah, okay, got it.
And it says CPS.
Yeah. There we go.
Right, so I want you to look at where it says menu at the top of the screen, if you can enlarge that, Mel. Right, and it says, and it's basically weighing scales with CPS underneath it, yeah?
Yeah.
Right. What should be there?
I don't know.
The sovereignty stamp
Okie
of
doke.
the people. Why has it gone missing? Because they can no longer hold it. Why? How long does a trademark last?
You're asking me questions I don't know the answers to, Terry.
70 years. So when was the Queen's reign? 1952. When was the Queen's death? 2022. 70 years to the day, and the sovereignty and the trademark of sovereignty went. And he can't now reproduce that. Why? Because he's a liege lord. So he no longer holds the sovereignty of the people. Can't. So now we've got misconduct in public office, IMPO. Common law offence that can be tried only by indictment, and it carries the maximum sentence of life imprisonment. Responsible for public offices held with serious willful abuse or neglect to their power or responsibilities to the public office held. So what I've just demonstrated is what are they not? Public officers.
Yeah, they're not, yeah, sorry, going back to that screenshot, yeah.
Right? So if they're not public officers and they are now taking public funds, claiming to be public officers,
it's misconduct.
Now that's got to bring in the Fraud Act. Section 2, Section 3, Section 4, Section 5, Section 13, 12 and 13. Fraud by misrepresentation, fraud by deception, embezzlement, blackmailing, abuse of power, working from delegated power. What can't power be done? It cannot be delegated.
Yeah.
Lord Chief Justice and the case law of Katona versus the dock workers. Right, so we now charge them with misconduct in public office because they no longer stood in public office. They stood in commercial. And how did that happen? I hear you shout. Right. Well, first, what I'll do, if you go down to Mitchell on that document, and it's Mitchell 2014, EWCA in blue.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you go to the bottom of that, where it says first, what position held? Secondly, or officers, and it goes to the bottom. Yes, the relevant employee or officer is acting as a public officer. If no, he or she is not acting as a public officer. And I'm reading it from it here that basically states that they are, there's loads of case laws on here that you can read. It's really interesting, and there you go. Right, and this is Lord Justice Levison, this is 2014, stated that the correct approach was to ask 3 questions. First, second, third, bang. These are all supposed to be public servants in one way or another, holding public office, taking public funds. Well, how can they be public officers when they are working against you and they are bypassing your constitutional laws in an act of treason to work under UK statutory corporate law without telling you what jurisdiction you are entering a court in, how many jurisdictions they're studying to entrap you into joinder or contract?
Yeah.
That's how they've done it. We told them to get out of Europe in 2016. They faffed about trying to cover their backs for the next 4 years, bringing in stupid nonsense like this order of precedence that's now void. Void. All acts of Parliament are void, and we can argue from 1960. But we can definitely state from 1973.
Is there any other documents you want to share before I ask you a question?
No, that's it. I'm done. I'm all out now with documents to show you and evidence.
Okay.
Oh no, I haven't. We've got the statutory declaration, haven't we?
Yes. Yes.
So if you pull that up, we'll do that one, and then we, that's all the documents.
Okay. So if I just.
So while you're finding that, babe, I'll just go into this. Right. If you are summoned to court, it's illegal. And all you need to do is issue a statutory declaration. Now, you won't find this on most court paper when you look for this, because it's actually categorised as the full document. And I only found it because I was nosy, and I thought, full document, what's this nonsense? Now, if you scroll this down, Mel, to guidance, there you go, stop the notes for guidance. Right, if you can just enlarge that slightly. Right, this is the Magistrates Court Act, and just because it's called the Magistrates Court Act does not mean it only works in magistrates' courts, right?
Even though that insolvency solicitor said I couldn't use this for county court.
You can. Because what does it say under section 14 or 16E of the Magistrates Court Act 1980? A trial is void where the case starts with a summons. Go on, Mel.
The case started with a summons, requisition, or single justice procedure notice.
Right?
Yeah.
Or you didn't find out about it until 21 days after. So therefore, if a trial starts with a summons, it's void, because they cannot summons you to court because you're in the wrong jurisdiction.
So, Terry, that begs the question. We all know that our lovely councils keep summoning thousands and thousands of people to court.
Yep.
But this
fill this document in. All you need to do is fill this document in. It's simple as a straightforward. You've had no disclosure. It breaches your constitutional rights. It stands you in the wrong jurisdiction. You are sovereign, therefore the council works for you and you are the creditor. It breaches CPR 31, CPR 31.6, CPS 24.5, which is all disclosure rules. Right? You never got the case evidence. You never got the statements that were made against you. You never got a statement of truth and fact from the plaintiff. Therefore, if you don't get the statement of truth and fact from the plaintiff, how can you represent yourself correctly with a robust defence if you don't know where you're arguing from?
Yeah.
and what they've claimed. This is why everybody goes into court and go, blah, 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 and you'd stood in the wrong jurisdiction, so they just slide and then slide again. It's like cha-cha slide.
Yeah.
We'll go from equity law. Oh no, right, we'll go to common law. Right, we'll go now into UK statutes. Now we'll trap you in new law. Well, we can, okay, we'll come back to this, and this is why they keep hounding you in court.
So you can't win, Terry?
You can, you just say no. Do not consent, bring forth the contract. You claim to be a judge, therefore I need to ensure that I'm dealing with the correct judge in the correct jurisdiction, and that you are bonded by your commercial bond and correct oath to the jurisdiction that you have brought me to. Because the council is a corporation. It's here acting as a corporation. Maxim in law, corporations cannot bring the man to work, man to court. Can't do it. So who is it? Are you a public authority or are you a corporation? Because it would seem that you are stood in two jurisdictions, maxim in law. Can't stand in two jurisdictions. Are you a corporation? Are you stood in two states? Well, you can't stand in two states either. Are you acting outside of the constitutional monarchy courts? Put it under a pre-action protocol notice. We're now going to sue you, Judge. You don't provide this information. We're having you. And we're going to put you under misconduct in public office because you now claim to be in public office when you're not. You're in corporate office. And therefore, you've not told me, here's the documentation and evidence I will rely upon. Send him those, print those documents out I've just showed you today. And there you go. And just because you claim to take me to a county court, when I've rang this morning, this is a recording that states it's an administrative court. Well, here's a copy of the Aylesbury's Law Book. It states very clearly, are you acting outside the laws of England? I'm not British, I'm not under contract, and I'm not under obedience or authority of the liege lord. This is my status requesting to him, to you. He's not king. Therefore, you cannot be in a constitutional monarchy court. Therefore, you have now subverted my constitutional, amiable common law rights. I now charge you with not only misconduct in public office, but here you go, 5 types of treason, criminal law. And I'm going to charge you with extortion. Because that's what it says in the English law books.
But we know they ignore it all. So
No. They can't ignore this one. That's the beauty. Because you're using their paperwork. So you now demand from the CPS a misconduct in public office form and tell them that you're indicting not only the judge, but all the staff in the office, and you're charging them with uttering under the common law crime as well as Scots law. Look that up, guys. It's basically Scots law's been updated from uttering. It's basically hiding criminals. And what are the judges doing? The criminals, they're in treason.
is Scots law easy to find?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Putting uttering and Scots law together. It literally pops up and you go, oh my God.
I asked you off air about successes, etc. I've had some experience in the courts, and every time I've tried to reference constitutional law, common law, Aylesbury's law, they just
override you.
Yeah.
And it's your fear. They work on your fear. And I'm not being nasty, but you are a quivering wreck when you get in there. Okay?
Yeah.
But the thing to do with them is literally you go in with your documentation and you say, right, we're going to stop this now, right? Because new evidence has come to light. I've now requested a misconduct in public office form because it appears that you are not in public office. You refuse to show me your oath and bond. You refuse to do this. You refuse to do that. I no longer believe that you are a judge under the constitutional monarchy court. Though, therefore, this is not a court of law. It is a commercial contract court. Fetch me my contract, which I knowingly, voluntarily, and intentionally signed, not under the presumption of obligation by compelled performance, as to equity law, because equity law puts you under a compelled performance. Look it up. And that's what they rely on to entrap you into. So unless you've got a contract with me, the woman from England, and if you state England does not exist again, I will now arrest you under Section 24A of the Police and Crimes and Evidence Act. And here you are, bollocks to you, I'm issuing you a notice. Now, here you go, pre-action protocols, walk across, touch the bar, touch the bench in front of him. Because that now puts you in, and they won't tell you this, but that now puts you in the bench under common law.
So that's why you're not allowed to approach the bench without permission?
Correct, because it's not a bench. You're not allowed to produce the bar. Because as soon as you touch it in your sovereign standard, it brings them back into your jurisdiction, which is common law. There's nothing they can do about it. That's why they stand up and shoo them out. Right, so you now issue against the so-called county court judge. You either prove this or here you go. You're served. You are now served a criminal notice of pre-action protocols. I am now, in this moment in time, charging you with misconduct in public office. Because you're not in public office. You're running this court from multiple jurisdictions outside of the rule of law and violating my constitutional rights as to Lord Kilmore's letter. It is all in there. So is the order of precedence, where you now claim that UK statutes overrule my constitutional rights. There's the case law of metric martyrs from 2002 that states the hierarchy of laws. And he states it does the three justices, Justice Bingham, Scott and Stein. Common law and the Bill of Rights can never be repealed, ever.